Hi, I'm Venessa Giunta. I am an author and an editor and an all-around like to talk about things person and a little awkward sometimes. One of my favorite things to do is talk to authors, right? I love talking to authors about their process, their writing, their careers, their marketing, all those things. And I really love just sitting down and just talking about stuff. I mean, communication is my love language. So that's really what I had in mind. I really wanted a situation where I could just have a conversation with somebody. So, and a conversation and a cocktail is really all about us hanging out and drinking together and talking about the stuff. I'm just jamming on the music. Hey, everybody. Hello, and welcome to a conversation and a cocktail where I am sitting down with TAMSIN Silver.
Hello.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I mean, it's earlier here for me than it is for you where you are. So
yes,
we still have, the sun is still setting. It's still light.
Yeah, it's not light here anymore. It's completely not light.
Nope.
So what are you drinking?
So I opted for this today. Screwball. It is a peanut butter whiskey. I discovered this in Colorado with, I was hanging out with fellow author David Boop, and a woman at the bar was like, you should try this. And I'm like, I'm not really a whiskey person. She's like, trust me. And so, and I'm like, okay, whatever. She's like, I'm going to have you do it as a shot and chase it with this grape flavored. It was like water with a squirt of stuff that you put in like when you're making flavored water. And so it was basically a peanut butter and jelly shot. Okay. And so we tried that and I was like, damn. I was like, can I just have 2 fingers of that on ice? That'd be great. And so now though, I like to just drink it without ice because I don't like it watered down. I still don't like regular whiskey. And that is, I'm sure, a thing that most of my friends who love whiskey are so sad about, and they don't think this is real whiskey. And I'm so sorry, you guys, because this stuff's great.
Now, see, I would be willing to try that because I also don't like whiskey. But I do like Fireball sweet. Because it's not real whiskey. It's mostly just cinnamon alcohol.
Right. Cinnamon will rip my stomach apart.
Right. But I also like peanut butter. So I feel like I might need to try that.
And don't do any other one. I feel like I'm doing an ad for Screwball. You too could like whiskey. And so so this is the only one. I've had people tell me don't do any other flavors. You can now, mind you, it looks like I am an alky here, but I purchased this about a year ago, I think.
Okay. So well, I was going to say, I mean, obviously you like it.
Yes. So I'll have like a finger or two full of it from occasion to sip on. I have a bad tendency to pour like 2 fingers full in a ball glass, and then I drink about half and then forget about it. And then I'm like, so I am just like, so it's fine. But that's why there's still so much left. Because I also, like, if I have a glass of wine out with people, whatever, dinner, it takes pretty much the entire evening for me to sip the whole glass of wine. So I'm a cheap date. That's what I'm saying.
Got it. Noted. Let me write that down. Okay. Well, I am drinking mead as I have been drinking every month. Nice. This is the last of this. It is a strawberry cider that's been aged in a chocolate rye barrel.
I have a bottle of that from the same meadery right over there, and it was almost my choice this evening.
Oh, we would have been twinsies.
Right? Sorry about that. I literally was like, am I in the mood for that? And I was like, I don't think so. And so I decided to stick with this one. But I do have a few bottles left from when I had a thing with that meadery in Atlanta.
Viking Alchemist.
Yes, Viking Alchemist. Yes. But it's like, they trick you. It's like $75 a quarter. Yeah, plus shipping. So that becomes like $125 all the way out to here in New Mexico. And it would just pop up and hit my bank account. And I'm like,
yeah.
I was like, I wasn't planning. So I had to let that go. But I still have a few bottles.
Yeah.
It also was getting out of hand, Vanessa. I had a lot. To the point where every time I'd go somewhere, I'd take a bottle of mead as a gift.
Same. Yeah. Same. Because I have that same subscription, except I don't pay shipping. I go and pick it up at some point eventually, and sometimes I have not been. So when the tornado came through last time, I had completely spaced out on the fact that there was one waiting for me. Oh. And so when I got the notice for the next one, which was 3 months later,
like, I was in the 6 bottles.
Right. Well, what was funny is by the time I got there, they'd already given away they'd already sold they had to go in the back and find the bottles from the previous one. Oops. So I was like, I'm so sorry, y'all. My house got demolished. This was not important to me.
Yeah, so sorry. But the trees, they like to aim for my house all the time.
It's true.
We've rebuilt now twice, right?
Yeah.
I have no trees near my home that if they fall would hit me. So.
Unfortunately, I live, I have 1.5 acres, and a full acre of it is trees. And because I live in Georgia, there are mostly Georgia pines and southern pines, which grow to be 120 feet tall. There's literally no way without just completely razing all of it. But we've taken down I think 18 trees or 23 trees, something like that. And we're still completely surrounded. But anyway, that's not what we want to talk about. That's not what we're here
to
for.
Drink. You want to know what you're talking about? What are we doing?
Right? I'm saying cheers. All right. So my first question is always, what was your radioactive spider bite, your origin story into writing and or publishing? So some people have been like, I've been writing since I was 2, but I started publishing because XYZ. But whatever you want to share with us.
Right. So I think I started writing stories back when I was in high school. I remember writing a book. We're going to use that as a loose term because I already know in my head a whole character that someone just disappeared partway through the story that I never finished. And I know that now. I was like, whatever happened to her? It's called Bloody Murder. And I wrote that my senior year of high school by hand because I'm so ADHD and I'm so I need to be doing something to listen to people a lot of the time if it's a long diatribe. And so I was writing a story and listening. I got the best grades ever my senior year. Once you understand how you learn best, it's a key. And so then I started typing stories on my dad's typewriter in the basement, which sounds creepy as fuck now that I say that out loud. But I was typing short stories and whatnot, on a rainy Saturday or whatever. And then I didn't write again for a long time. And then in college, I started working on what is now the Windfire series. And then, of course, I stopped again. And then, believe it or not, Twilight is the reason I put myself into focus. I think when Twilight came out, I hadn't read the books. The movies came out and everybody was a buzz about it. And you know how you have that fear that someone's telling the story you wanted to tell? And yes. So I went to see the movie. There was 3 people in the theater with me that afternoon. Obviously before everything went nuts. And I watched and I was like, not my story. But it made me realize that if I didn't want to end up in a situation where someone did something that was similar to mine, that I should really get that done. And so I only had it in printed form. Because it was saved somewhere on a hard case floppy, and computers no longer were using those by then. Yep. And so I had to retype the whole thing, which is fine. It made it a better story, I'm sure. And so I worked to get that done. And it was great because at the time I was stage managing for Dennis Lehane. He had written his first play, and I was stage managing it off Broadway. And we had to spend Thanksgiving, and he and I talked writing because I was stuck at the midway point on something, and he gave me some great advice, and then our theater, the recession hit, and the theater company that I was running at the time in New York City hit a bump due to that, and so I was like, you know what, I'll take 2 years, and either I get published or I find an agent, or I find a manager, something in 2 years, or I'm going to go off to grad school for directing. This was the decision I made. And that would have been in 2009. And then I got picked up by a small press in 2010, and my first book came out in 2011. And so that is sort of how that went. And they didn't do the best editing job. John Hartness and I really were talking a lot, and he was really instrumental in me moving forward into self-publishing, because he was like, they need to do a better edit. And so when my 1 year was up with them, I went ahead and I took my rights back, and they fought me on it. And they were she was being a total bitch, and not the woman who had originally, but the owner of the company. And I was like, look, this is what it says in my contract. I read it very clearly. And she was like, all right, we'll pull it by this date. I'm like, no, it came out on this date. I need you to pull it by him, because I didn't tell her, but I was re-releasing them as YA with new covers and everything, and a new title at New York City Comic Con. And I needed it by that day. And she just got livid. And she's like, well, we weren't going to renew you anyway. And I'm like, whatever, just let me go. And so I found someone to re-edit it who worked with Random House, and I re-released them at New York City Comic Con in 2011 or 2012. I can't remember. I think 2012. I re-released them in 2012. So, and then it just kind of went from there. So that's kind of the arc of the process. And I fully was aware that I was a beginning baby author, and that we start down. And I got really lucky, though. I met an amazing writer at New York City Comic Con. John introduced me to Faith Hunter. And so Faith became kind of a mentor to me in many ways. And so I think that is one of the reasons writing improved as it did. Not to mention just meeting other authors and just continuing to write and research.
That's so important. I think having authors both farther along on the journey than you, and also people behind you, because you can then pay it forward, right, with the folks who are smaller than you, and we still learn from them too, because they sometimes have skills that we may not have, or they may not be strengths for us.
I'm always aware of strengths I don't have, sweetheart.
Yes, same.
Every time someone's like, I love this book, I'm like, I'll let my editor know.
Thanks.
I'm like, the editors who keeps me from doing stupid things. And so mostly grammar issues. That's my biggest. I don't really have issues with making sure that the story has that through line, or that I don't tend to miss many things in that. So I just usually need an editor who's going to be like, yeah, you use this word 3 times in this paragraph, and maybe you don't use that many commas. My problem used to be, you don't have enough commas. Now it's, you have too many commas. So
many commas.
There's so many fucking commas. And so yeah, I always make sure my editor hears about anyone who is like, this thing's great. Oh, and I should mention before we even go on, because of my Scottish background, the more I drink, the redder my face will get.
So you're not having a conniption or anything?
I'm not having problems. My blood pressure is not going up. I am a descendant of Archbishop Canterbury Campbell. His name was Archibald Campbell Tate. He was born in Edinburgh, even though he was, of course, Archbishop of Canterbury, which is down in England. And so, in seconds, I drink alcohol. My eyes get a little more slanty, and my face gets red.
So you can never pull off not being drunk or not having been drinking at all.
No, there's a great picture of my of a doctor friend of mine, Dr. Ryan Campbell, and it's a picture of the two of us after we had, and he is also Scottish. And the two of us had been out having a drink, and we took a picture in the car afterwards. And I have it on my desk at my office at the hospital. And it always makes me laugh because it is very evident that the two of us have been drinking. So,
and that you're
two
both
Scottish people in America going, hey,
hey, sup? Well, speaking of sup, there's a whole bunch of people in the chat. It was funny. I was on the wrong tab, and I was like, why isn't anybody saying anything? But I was on the private chat, and I flipped over to the comments, and I was like, oh, there's a bunch of people here. So hello to everybody. There's Anita, and I see Faye, And Cherry, hi y'all, and JD, happy Monday. And Dino's here. Hi, Dino. Yes. And JD says we could all use a cocktail. It's true. It's true. Cherry is so good on not drinking that. They like peanut butter, they like whiskey, they like bacon and maple, but does not like all of that mixed in the whiskey. I mean, valid.
I challenge you to try it anyway. I'm just saying, at a bar, like, don't go buy a bottle and waste your money in case you hate it, unless, of course, you live close enough or you're willing to ship it to me. But maybe at a bar, if they have it, try a shot of it, chase it with something grape or strawberry like jam flavored, and see what you think.
Yes, that sounds fabulous. I love it. Yes. All right, so I want to talk a little bit. So you're that first series that you did, that was YA urban fantasy, yeah?
Yeah.
Right.
Originally it was an adult, and I have a few copies of it left. You can't buy it anywhere, and I have a few of it. And if someone's like, I don't care how well it's edited, I want sex scenes, I'll be like, here you go.
Here it is.
You can have it. I can sell it to you. It's not available anywhere. I think I have 5 copies.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. So that's just the adult version?
It would be an adult version of the first 2 in the series. So there are currently 5 books in the Windfire series. I'm working on book 6. But the first 2 were the first 2 books that I wrote that are out in YA form were originally just one story. And when we switched them to YA, we split it and made it 2, because back then, long books, YA couldn't handle long stories. Not only that, but I was informed I couldn't use the F word more than like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Things have changed.
Yes. Because I also think that YA has become a lot more realistic.
Yes.
In that, high schoolers often use the F-bomb more than I do, and you know me, so that's saying something.
Yeah, and so I think it's just interesting. So the plan right now for anyone who's listening who actually reads those, the plan is to put 1 and 2 back together into one book, put 3 and 4 back together in one book, finish book 6, and then put 5 and 6 back together in one book in new art, and do something with that. So that is the plan. As I'm working on 6, I'm going to edit 1 through 5, then finish 6 so that I remember what the hell is going on, because it's been a minute. So that is definitely on the list for the next year or 2 to do.
Wow. Yeah. You've rewritten those books a lot.
I don't think I don't plan to put any of the sex back into the books. I'm going to let them stay YA adjacent. And I say adjacent because she's in her early 20s. But to me, I was a young adult in my early 20s. Like, that's when that's when you make so many discoveries about who you are and what you're passionate about, and where that you draw that line in your life. And these books are very much an exploration of the gray area between the good and the bad, and that gray line, and how you feel about that area, and what happens to your friends when you make decisions based on where you stand, and everybody growing up and becoming adults. And and I was really heavy into White Wolf LARPing at the time that I wrote it. Yeah, that'll age me. Anyway, it's fine. I'm drinking. It's all fine. And so it's got a similar feel to those, even though I don't use the rules of it because copyright laws. But it has got a very political feel to it in that regard. You've got 2 different sides. I write it from male and female perspective, good guys, bad guys. The whole point of the series is that it takes you on a trip and you're like, oh, I support these people. These side are the good guys. By book 2, you're like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. And so the whole point is for you to go on the same journey as the lead character and kind of figure out where you think you should be in this series. So that was that first series. And I really like I have got people who are like, can you not finish that? I'm like, do it. So that for those of you who actually have read that and want more, do know it. I am aware. I am not.
You're working on it.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. But I've got a couple other things that are on the pitchfork first.
Understood. So I mostly know you for the Billy the Kid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that is like historical fantasy, alternate history, kind of paranormal stuff. So I mean, they've got similarities in that they both have, supernatural.
There's both a lot of fantasy. There's a whole magic system. It's a full world build. So it's very similar in that regard to the urban fantasy I write.
Mm-hmm.
There's just more real history. I use real history through all of my stuff. There's stuff in all of my books where I pull from real history, but the Billy the Kid is obviously very, very basic.
Do you find that challenging, working your magic systems and your world building? Do you ever run into problems where the history is actually causes you to be like, oh, this is not going to work? Like, how do you handle that?
So one of the things I love about using history and writing is I like the fact that I like to go through and find the loopholes. There are windows of things that they just have open. We're like, and this happened, but we don't know anything. I'm like, fantastic. That leaves me a spot to create shit.
Yes.
For instance, Susan McSween in the Billy the Kid series, there's a book about her, and they talk about how if you wanted to know anything about Susan, you had to directly ask her that question. And people just didn't tend to do that. And so she didn't offer information. They know she was at the Battle of Gettysburg. And then they're like, we really don't know what happened to her from there until she really showed up in Lincoln. I'm like, that's friggin' perfect. So that lands right in my lap in a great way. But there are times that the history gets in the way. And like I had written an entire scene where one of my characters turns into a werewolf and he's there to help protect Billy. And then I realized that on that day, the moon wasn't up at that time. And it's a specific time that Billy went to meet with someone in town. He went to meet to like broker a deal on something. And I was like, oh, moon wasn't up. That changed. So I had to rewrite it.
Because there'd be somebody out there who looked that shit up.
Right. And so I had this whole set of photos that I'd screenshotted of the moon cycle and when it was up and when it was down throughout that whole time period. And I went off that. So if it's wrong, it's because I got bad information, not because I didn't try my best. So it is. So I had to fix that. I had also wanted to write a scene in the final battle in book 2 when it's the big 5-day battle at the end of the novel. I mean, it takes like the last quarter of the novel for us to do the 5-day battle because it's a big, big thing. Lots of history there, right? However, there is there's a thing called the Torion in Lincoln, and it's a round building with 3 levels counting the roof, and it's surrounded by a stone wall, and it's where everybody would go and hide. And when the Native Americans would attack, the Apache were an issue at the time in that area. And so, but it still was standing, and it made sense with all the information I had that they would have, when they came in the middle of the night to take position to start this battle. First off, McSween owned that land. Second, it's the best spot to fight from. They would have taken it. And George Coe's book says they took it. However, in every other book, it says that the other side had the Torion.
Oh.
And I'm like, and what George had written was that 5 Mexican men had taken the Torion and were holding it for Billy's team. So I have 5 missing Mexicans. And I'm like, so I started reaching out to historians like, do you know what happened to these people? We could never find it. And I spent a month, just unable to write because I couldn't figure out what to do until like a little voice in my head went, you also write fiction.
Hello.
So I was like, so I wrote, I made it very ambiguous. I didn't want to be very specific on what happened to them too much other than they vanished and possibly were bitten or taken or whatever, because someday it might come out what happened there. And I want to leave it as
run.
Right. I want to leave it as black as possible. So history gets in the way occasionally from my magic system, especially since I decided that my werewolves could only change when the moon was up, because let's make things harder. And then, so when you world build and you create magic systems, but here's the thing. I think it's exceedingly important that you create difficulty for yourself, because I think doing that fosters an imaginative concept idea that you actually have to work harder and you have to come up with things that aren't simple. For instance, in Skye of the Damned, it started off as a web series. And because we were grassroots, didn't have a lot of money, and I have vampires, I had to make sure I figure out how to put vampires in the sun, or we were going to have to do night shoots, and that cost way more money. But we didn't have. And so I was like, what if there's this thing called a blacklight pill? Because it's a very goth industrial club kind of show. So blacklight, I thought it was funny. So they're blacklight pills, and vampires can take those to go out in the sun for a limited window. And so we used that as but I wouldn't have done that. And it becomes a through line through the whole series, and it has to do with the bad guy and stuff. And it eventually does play into the story. But I wouldn't have come up with that and created another layer of the magic and the world build if I hadn't had to figure out that. So I'm a firm believer in make some difficult choices. Go ahead and get as complicated with things as you can. If you really hit a wall and you really can't get around it, guess what? You can go back and fix that magic system. So yeah, I'm a firm believer in make things a little difficult for yourself.
Yeah, I like that. And it's funny because like I've been stuck in a book for a long time. And one of the things I've been really tossing around is that sometimes my stories go too fast, meaning not pacing wise, but like there's not enough things. Like this happens and they respond and they do this, and then this happens and they respond and they do that, and then they do this and then they do that. But like there's not necessarily as much struggle as there could or should be. So that's a thing that I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel like that's the universe going, listen,
you need to make things a little more difficult for yourself in certain areas. Yeah.
Yes, I think so.
And that's actually something that I'm having trouble with right now. I am currently working on the final book in the Skye of the Damned series called Faith of the Damned. I am easily 10K from being at the end. And I'm so goddamn close. I literally have to go tie this off, tie that off, big battle. We're done. So, and so I'm questioning myself on things, because sometimes I'm worried we are figuring out puzzles pieces too quickly. Yeah. However, the book's already getting to a certain length. So I'm like, maybe we just let some of that go. So I'm trying, like they save her, like I'm in the middle of saving one of the people that's been captured at a battle. And it literally felt like they rescued her way too easily. And so I was like, all right, we have to complicate this a little. They just can't exit and be like, and we're free, we saved her. So of course, as they come outside, the bad lady stand there going, hi. So I then have to deal with that as well. Now, mind you, they figure a way to get past that in a quick manner, because I can't have us sit on things too long. We're trying to finish the book. But yeah, I'm having that problem with this book right now. I'm trying to make sure that we don't make anything seem too easy.
Excellent. Yeah. So we've got some new folks in the chat. Enthralled at Dusk is here. I think that's Erica. And James has arrived. Hello, James. And Anita agrees that loopholes are good. Loopholes in the history. So yes. And y'all, if y'all have any questions for Tamsin, feel free to drop it in the chat and we will, circle back to it. She's pretty cool about answering questions and stuff.
Yep.
So, so you obviously work on multiple books at once, because you said you're working on finishing up the urban fantasy and Skye of the Damned. So
yeah. So I'm working on finishing Skye of the Damned. I am starting to prep myself for a reread and edit, just go through of the Windfire series. Due to the audiobook for Mark of the Necromancer, kind of relighting the fire on that. It's a standalone book, but I have left it open for more with her. And if I had $1 for everyone recently who has reached out and gone, I need more of this, I wouldn't have to write it. I'd have the money. And so I have begun writing The Necromancer of New York. It does take place mostly in New York. We go to New Orleans for a bit, and I'm taking a trip to New Orleans in May. I'll be doing a book signing there at one of the stores with my vampire books. I'll make sure I release that information on my website and on Facebook and all the other things. So I will be there in late May from the 16th to 21st of May. And I'm just waiting to hear from the person who owns that store what day I can come in and do a signing. But I'm going there also for research purposes for that. And then I'm also, you're like, really, all of this? Yes. I'm doing research for the next Billy the Kid trilogy.
Wow.
It is the Untold Legends Man of Death.
How do you juggle working on multiple books? Like, do you have a set schedule that you do stuff, or do you what inspires you? Like, oh, I feel like Billy the Kid today.
There's no schedule.
Okay.
Oh God.
That's fair.
I'm a squirrel. No, I literally write what, like right now, if I sit down to write, I'm going to work on Skye because I'm so close to being done. I wanted to be done back in July. That did not happen. And so my editor is probably like, yeah, I noticed. So I will get that done when I get it done. And I just have to work it really forgiving myself for not getting things done when I thought, just because life happens and
it's been a rough.
The world's not currently on fire in many ways. And so what happens is I will, once I finish Skye, it'll be whatever character I hear the loudest. I originally sat down to write the third Skye book, and that's when Mark the Necromancer happened, because that wasn't the character I was hearing. I was hearing someone else, and Sabrina's very different. And so my plan is to sit down after Skye and probably work on Necromancer of New York due to requests. While I'm still, but if I'm not in the mood for that, I will sit down and work on the first book in the new Billy, which I did start. And that one is based on the serial killer of the Midnight Assassin, who was also known as Servant Girl Annihilator. And that will be the title of book 1 is The Servant Girl Annihilator. Book 2 will be the Whitechapel Murderer. And book 3 will be The Beast of Chicago.
Oh,
so that is weird. So we will be following the Midnight Assassin, and then we'll be going to Ripper and then H.H. Holmes.
Nice. Excellent.
Yes. So that series has been started. I am doing that research. There's not a lot of books on the Midnight Assassin. There's 2.
Yeah.
And so there's only so much, but
about that one.
So and they're being written a little differently than the original series. So
that'd be interesting.
So not just in first person. They're written in first and third, which is awkward, I'm sure. But I sat down and talked with a friend of mine, an editor friend, and we were really trying to figure out the best way to start with the inciting incident, and yet Billy's not there for it. And so what we're doing is case numbers. So case numbers, when we get to case number, you are getting third person. You meet all the people involved in the murder that happened in that town. Billy will come in, and any scenes that Billy's in, it's in first person from Billy's point of view. But if we case number, if the chapter is actually not a chapter but a case number, it's third person. So it's an unusual choice, and it's what is also what I'm also going to be working on. So I've got multiple stuff, and I'll probably switch just based on what I'm hearing that day, which sounds awkward to people who don't write. People who write, they're like, yeah, I get that. People who don't write, like, so you're hearing voices. Yes, we do.
Yes, that's how it works. That's how it works. Well, we had folks in the audience don't know this, but we had a conversation earlier about serial killers. So I'm going to be like totally down. I actually have a flash, microfiction that I wrote for one of the NYC Midnight contests that is a letter from one of H.H. Holmes' victims to her sister about how she was able to find this hotel and how the proprietor's a little weird but very charming and stuff like that. So the thing is, if you don't get the clues in the letter and you're not familiar with H.H. Holmes, you don't necessarily need to know her name. But if you're not familiar with H.H. Holmes and that whole era, the Columbian expedition and all that not expedition. I do that every time I say it, which was the World's Fair. So if you don't know that, you wouldn't get it, which is why, like, I'm never sure if I want to do anything with publishing it because you have to have some previous knowledge. to actually get it, but I feel like you would get it.
Yes. So what's interesting is that one of the reasons I went to England about 2 years ago is I went to England to research, and I went on lots of trips. I went on different, things about Ripper, because so we know a lot more about serial killers at this time, right? We know a lot more about serial killers. Serial killers. I can talk. Have more whiskey. We know more now about when they change the way they usually have one way that they tend to kill, and it's not hard to connect the Midnight Assassin to Ripper. In fact, when Ripper first started killing, there was an article in the paper in London that basically said the Midnight Assassin has come to London. Oh. And so, sorry, I'm still getting over all kinds of crap here. And so, and there's a documentary out called, what is it called? It's on the History Channel. It's called The American Ripper.
Yeah.
And it's about the son or grandson of H.H. Holmes.
H.H. Holmes, yeah.
And he was a CIA, he was like a lawyer. And so he partners with the CIA agent, and they do a lot of research to try and see if they can prove or not prove whether or not H.H. Holmes was Ripper, right? And they can't disprove it.
Yeah.
They actually have logs when Holmes was going back and forth from London, and there's never a time when he is definitely in the Americas at that time, and then Ripper kills. There's never, like, those things happen when he is in London. And the drawings on that, if you guys haven't watched it, you can just look it up online. And they have somebody draw, like, based on people said when they saw Ripper, here's what they think he looks like. And that drawing, and the woman had never seen a picture of H.H. Holmes. And you compare that picture to H.H. Holmes, and they're almost identical.
Yeah.
And so, so my question was, how do I justify the way of killing? And will you believe it took me three different tours of hearing the information, and it was the last tour, and it was a woman who did it, and she's brilliant. And she said something, and it just like, okay, I'd seen it in the other two like trips I did, but it didn't click. And she just said something, and I went, "Oh my God, yes!" And of course, everybody
turns around and looks at you.
Everybody turns to look at me, and I'm like, "Hey."
So,
it's fine.
I'm just an American.
I'm not weird, I promise. And it was the fact that the very last murder that Ripper did, he had a young woman trapped in her own home and had as much time with her as he wanted to experiment on her. The pictures are gruesome. Don't look it up if you're squeamish. It's bad. And I went, oh, look, there's where you have your change. Because what does Holmes do? He buys a building and he has people in separate rooms where he can keep them and experiment on ways of killing them.
Yes.
And that is how you connect Ripper to Holmes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so but it was like this huge moment, and I made noise, and everybody was like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, hi, I swear I'm fine. So yeah, so it was important that I went and did that. At first I thought, well, this trip has been useless, but then like the last time I went, I was like, aha. So yeah, so it was really helpful to be there. I have pictures from almost all the locations. Some of those locations are now outdoor hallways. Like the homes, they're like, we're standing where the house used to be, and we're in this beautiful like vestibule, this nice new building. We're like, yeah, this, but it's the spot. But you know, everything's very different.
Yeah, of course.
So that is the Untold Legends Man of Death. And every time I talk about, people get super excited, and I'm like, guys, I got to do research before these can come out. And I will finish at least I will finish book 1 and 2 before I ever start sending off to John at Falstaff for starting to edit, because that way I can finish 3 and we can kind of put them all out back to back. Mm-hmm. So he knows what I'm working on. He knows what the plan is. So we will see from there what happens.
Oh, I'm excited about those.
Right? I am too. I'm really excited, but I've got there's all these other things going, I need your attention.
Yes, I understand that too.
Right?
Yes. So you mentioned earlier, and folks who were here earlier probably heard this, but folks who just joined us may not know this about you, but your background is actually in theater and production and stuff like that. And you mentioned to me before the show that you just had a show that you did. So will you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So my degree is in theater education, and I've taught middle school and high school theater. I grew up doing theater, mostly performing in musicals. And then I got to college and I did a lot of straight shows and Shakespeare. And then I went off to teach middle school, then high school drama. And then I ran a theater company out of the Carolinas. And then I moved to New York City. And then I ended up running a successful theater company there until the recession hit, which is then, as we've discussed, how I ended up going towards writing. But I decided somewhere around early 2020 that I wanted to get back into theater. So I put together a resume and I sent letters out. And that would have been about early March 2020.
So right about that time. Right about that time.
I would say a week later, the world shut down. And I went, great timing. So I just waited. And then a while ago, I was like, okay, I really want to finally get back into theater. Yeah, it's been a long time. I think the last time I worked a show was 2010, maybe wow. 2010, 2011. So it's been a minute. But I got burnt out. I was running a company. I was directing for other companies. I was stage managing for other companies. I was doing technical direction work, and I was, I did a lot of different things, and I burnt myself out. And so I took a break, got published, and now I'm like, okay, I need to go back. And I was supposed to stage manage Little Women. And that fell through for a few different reasons. And it was really a good thing it did. I'm really great at stage managing. I really hate it. Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you love it, but it paid $1,000. And so I was like, and I was trying to put out the audiobook for Billy the Kid, and that would have paid for a good portion of it. And so I was like, I'll suck it up and do it. And then it fell through for a few reasons, but it turned out to be for the best. And so instead, I am the assistant director for Man of La Mancha. And that is happening at MTS Musical Theater Southwest here in Albuquerque. We are sold out. And so, 4 weekends worth sold out already. If you live in Albuquerque and you, for some reason, are actually seeing this, if you come in 30 minutes before a show and get on a wait list, you might get a seat because sometimes people don't show. FYI. So the cast is phenomenal. They are not just talent-wise, but as people. Mm-hmm. And I told them that at the show on Sunday for our matinee. We get into circle before the show, and people bring up things we need to do, and FYI, do this and that. And I just told them all, I said, I just want you guys to know how much we've seen, how much you've grown, even just from when you came and auditioned, like the way you've all bloomed. And I don't just mean as actors, they've bloomed as people. Mm-hmm. And their relationship to each other and how supportive they've been of one another. When one person our lead had a throat malfunction happen with his larynx on opening night. And the way everybody rallied around him and the fact his bravery, he pushed through and still did that show. And it was just the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Matt is exceedingly talented, and to watch him still give one of the best performances of Cervantes I've seen with his throat not wanting to behave for him in a musical. And it was affecting his speaking as well. So but to watch the cast rally around and support him and just how they all are that way, it just has reminded me why I needed to get back to theater and theater people. And I've just made some really great friends on this. And it's been a really great way to step back in. And so I don't know if I'll be directing anytime soon for them or anyone else in town. I am applying for their holiday show. And I'm writing up a concept I have to submit by the 21st for that. They're doing Frozen. And so, fully aware. Right. And I'm new, so chances are they won't pick me, but I am going to submit. And so we'll see what happens with that. And if I get it, I'm going to be like, oh no. Like, what have I got myself into? But I think that it would be a fantastic opportunity, and I would love to do it. So I'm hoping. But what really made me decide to do that is that the experience with this cast and these people has been amazing. And the director is, I think that, and you know, if anyone's done theater, they know everything comes from the director, right? And Rob Cisneros is a phenomenal director. He's been doing this for 40 years. He is exceedingly talented and just an amazing director. And so being able to sit back and watch him and learn from him, even though I've been doing this for years, has been phenomenal. I consider myself very lucky to have been able to work with him and this team. And so I'm just really blessed to have gotten to work on it. And I'm going to miss these people in 2 weeks when the show's done. So, but if you, for some reason, are watching this and live near here, come see the show. It's really great.
Hey.
You guys don't know, if you don't know what Man of La Mancha is, just type it. You're going to be like, oh, it's a comedy, but it's a dark comedy.
Yes. We like dark comedies, especially these days.
Right. And this show is, so I don't know if you know, but it's a very political show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's about the Spanish Inquisition, about when Moors and the Jews and anyone who wasn't specifically Catholic were thrown into jails. And Cervantes did get arrested and thrown into one of those jails. And this work that he has come up, that we are doing in Man of La Mancha, it takes place in the prison. And so we pull props from things that would be in a prison. It doesn't change. We don't all of a sudden go, okay, and now we're in make-believe. And so I think it's an amazing piece that really touches people on things that are, sort of current too.
Yeah. I think stuff like that is always current, honestly, these days.
Yes.
So I actually wanted to ask you, do you feel like your background in theater has informed how you write your fiction, or your strengths within writing fiction, or weaknesses?
I think it's a strength. And what's interesting is there is a Dragon Con panel from 2020 where we did all of them virtually. Yeah. And I'm on with some big name authors. Somehow I got on one of those panels with everyone who has a lot of sales and me. And so, but all of us had theater background. John Hartness has a theater background.
Mm-hmm.
I think it offers up an opportunity and a background in understanding internal dialogue in general as well, understanding characterization and building character flaws.
Mm-hmm.
I think it gives you an idea of how to arc a story, understanding where a climax falls, how resolution needs to sort of happen. And I think that it really gives you the ability to write in a way that's visual for those who are visual readers. And I think it helps you with world building. And so I see it definitely as a bonus. Not only that, but the reason I actually became an attending pro sooner and got onto panels sooner with places like Dragon Con and stuff like that was because I do well on panels because I studied acting and improvisation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that anyone who wants to do writing, if they take some theater classes, I think they're going to find it does them a service. Not only that, but if you think about it, I started off as an actor. And so my focus was understanding one character and their point of view and why they make the choices they do. And then I went from that to being a director where I started looking at the whole picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, what is this entire story? Who are all these people? How do they connect to one another? Why is each person important? What do they bring to the story? Are they needed? Are they not needed? Because you've seen shows where you're like, why is that character here? Or you've read books and gone, I don't know why they're in this story at all. And so you get a really good idea when you're directing a show of understanding relationships in that regard. And then I became someone who ran a company. And I was then looking not just at one show, but how an entire season and what kind of message that season tells and what your focus is in that season. And so and then from there, I decided to start writing. And to me, it's a natural progression because now what I'm doing is I am doing the exact same thing I was doing before, but now it's in written word. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and I have a lot of people who say, your stuff's very visual. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure it is. Because that's all I can do. Like I see it. So thus that's how it comes out. Right. So, yeah.
It's hilarious. So I'm not a theater kid. I was way too shy to do that when I was young. You wouldn't think I was shy when I was young, but I was super shy when I was a kid. So I never got into that. But I did a lot of, in the early days of the internet, I did a lot of online role playing in the White Wolf world.
Yep.
So my strengths I found in my writing are directly correlated to that, because I'm very good at keeping my point of view, because when you were doing online role playing, you could only act for your character. You couldn't act for somebody else's character. You couldn't give their reaction to what your character was doing. So I got very good at point of view. I got very good at dialogue. And I got very good at scenes, like a scene. My weaknesses are description and plotting, because a lot, because when you're doing a an online role playing game, there's usually somebody else who's like tossing things at you, and they're giving you kind of a general plot. So it was just not. So my weaknesses are also the things I didn't do very much in the role playing, which I think is also super interesting.
I have to go back and add stuff like that. Yeah. So I have a tendency to do the first draft, has all the dialogue, all the basic, the action, everything. I have to go back and do internal dialogue and description and all of that, because when I'm thinking of a story, I tend to think in what I see visually in my head and the dialogue. Because plays.
Yes. I always have to do a pass where I go back and I have to look at all my descriptions, because they're all awful. If you ever get a good description from me, it's because I opened a vein on the page. That's why. If you're like, oh my God, this is an amazing description, then just push my blood out of the way, because it's all on that page right there.
Because it's all right there. Yeah.
It's all right there. So it looks like Arthur Cooper has joined us and says, see, now I see why Tamsin's characters jump out of the book, so you can see and imagine the conversations. Yes. And no God modding. No, you can't do that in role-playing games.
Right?
Yeah, you can't do that in when you're online role-playing.
No.
So, no, it's not like World of Warcraft. It was all text. Everything was text.
Everything was text.
There were no pictures at all. And James should know this, because he's not my age, but he's not that far back. But at any rate, and he's an IT guy, he's a tech guy. So I imagine he probably was on the internet early too. So let's see. What else is okay? So you don't have anything new coming out yet, because you're still working on the things, right?
No, I don't have anything new. No, but my hope is that that I will have samples from the final book for Faith of the Damned at Dragon Con. Even if it's stuff I print out and bring, that's the hope of the books, because chances are I will finish that sometime in the next 2 months and send it off to Lucy, but it all depends on her schedule. And I'm not going to be like, hey, get that done fast when I took forever to get it to you. That doesn't happen. I respect them way too much. So I will get that to her, and she can get to it when she gets to it. But that doesn't mean I won't put together something and bring it as a free giveaway, or upload it onto the website and give you a QR code. And you can quickly find it and read the new stuff. I will give everyone who's listening one awesome little tidbit about the next book. Skye gets ready. So Skye gets wings, and that's all I'm saying. And I'll tell you that she unfortunately gets them and can't control them, and is on the subway in New York City during New York City Comic Con, and that is all I'm mentioning.
Okay, that's gonna be awesome. So I'm here for it. Yes, we do love exclusives.
So it is. Yeah, so that's a fun piece and that's been a plan of mine for years and years, ever since I even started working on it. I always wanted that scene, and so it's such a fun scene. But yeah, so we mention in the series there's the Legend of Faith, and it's about these 3 items. You know, it's urban fantasy. There's some sort of folklore of we're all going to save the world. And for her,
we have to get the things.
Yeah, so we have to go find the things. And so I've been having to write like riddles. I'm not good at that. And so I've had some help. And then they have to take that and they have to figure it out. And that's what I was talking about. Do they figure it out too easy? Like I'm trying, but then again, if you think about women can find information on someone online in seconds. And so there's a comment in the store with like, when the girls all pull out their laptops and they're like, all right, I got this. What do you have? And the guys are like, you guys could open a detective agency. And they're like,
we're women on the internet.
Yeah, this is what we do. We can find everything on the internet. And because of, and I literally went through Google to like, I'd type in things from it. Like if someone was searching information and I used that so that it would seem legit and that it wasn't. And that's kind of my big concern. So my beta readers for that, I'm going to be like, let me know if things seem figured out too quickly. So they do find these 3 and it leads to the final battle. And so, but we're having to tie off all the little things from the first 2 books. And by the way, if anyone's interested, you can go to either my website at tamsinsilver.com or skyetheDam.com, and you can actually watch all the episodes for free. We filmed 6 episodes of the show. I wrote 7. So episodes 1 through 7 are what make the first book. And then book 2, you'll find there's a lot more action because I'm not limited anymore. I can write what I want. There's a great fight scene in a building vested like in the set. So I don't know if you've ever seen those old pre-war buildings in New York, but often they are built kind of like a square and with an open area in the center.
A courtyard,
and, yeah, they have this courtyard and that's where all of the, if they're not on the outside of the building, they're on that section where all of the fire exits, like all of those are. And so the fight is jumping from one to the other, things we never could have filmed. And so I was like, well, I can do this because I don't have anything limiting me. So they are written to go quickly and to be the chapters are short, much like when you watch the web series. I try to keep it in that same feel. So if I don't have anything new book-wise to give out I will have snippets for people to read the new opening for Faith of the Damned.
That's going to be so exciting.
It's a really big adventure ending. I'm very proud of where it's gone so far. And our hope is that Lauren Steinmeier, who played Skye in the series, and some of the people who might be watching who have been to DragonCon may have met Lauren from time to time when she's come. She is hoping to be able to do the recording of all of them in audiobook for us.
Oh, that would be cool.
Fingers crossed. So
yeah.
And I'm doing new covers for a whole nother section. So once all 3 are out, there'll be a whole nother section of 3 of them that come out with new covers. And they will have interviews in the back with cast members and crew members from the show. And then an omnibus will come out with a hardcover omnibus with a new cover as well. So
I love that.
So that's why it's taking also a while to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of financial stuff involved as well.
Yeah.
So Susan Roddy is doing my new covers. And they're
I love her stuff.
Yeah. So
I love her stuff.
They're very simple covers. The omnibus will be a little more intricate, and the other ones are more simple. But it'll be so you'll have options to either buy the original covers with Lauren on the cover, as you can see right there, or the new ones, which have each book has one of the emblems from the things they have to find. The feather from one of the wings of one of the last angels, the sword of Goliath, and a saint's medal. So
that's so exciting.
So so that's what I have. That's the newest thing that'll be coming out. And I'm sad to say I can't promise it'll be out by DragonCon just because I have been busy with other things and the world's kind of on fire. And so sometimes I just don't have the spoons to write. So
yes, I feel you deep in my heart with that, Tamsin.
So this feels very similar to some few years ago.
This feels very similar to every year in the 2020s, if I'm being quite honest. Basically this decade, I've been saying for years now that, I'm just come New Year's, I'm just going to go straight to 2030 and y'all can catch up. I'm done with this decade. I'm finished.
This whole
can
thing's
it just
been
be over?
Yes.
It's awful. It's awful.
It's awful.
All right. So I will see you at Dragon Con, I'm sure.
You will see me at Dragon Con.
Are you doing anything before Dragon Con?
I am. There's a chance I'm going to do El Paso Comic Con. I usually do it. I don't know if I will this year, just because I'm also going to New Orleans in May, and financially it might be better. So this might be a year I don't do as many cons. So the next thing for me is likely I have to play the month game. What are we even in right now?
We're in March.
So I'm like, what are we? Who are we?
What is time even?
What is time? Because I don't know. It says it's 8:00, but my brain thinks it's later. So I'm guessing that the next thing I will probably do will be in the summer. They have Old Lincoln Days that happen in the first weekend of June. June, not August, June. Oh my God. And it's Old Lincoln Days, and I usually sell Billy books while I'm there. If you've never heard of Old Lincoln Days, not shocked. In Lincoln, it is reenactments of Billy the Kid. Everything is in town. If you've never heard of Lincoln, it's like a 1 mile long S-shaped road, and everything there is very much looks almost like it did back when Billy was there. And so it's a really cool place for reenactments, and people act out stuff and gunshots and all kinds of stuff. There is a play they do, and it's all very with horses, live horses, and people riding, and things happen. And so I'll be selling books there. Arthur has been there.
Arthur says he's wrong. Arthur says you're wrong. It's the first weekend of August.
Is it August? See, this is why I have you here, Arthur. Thank you so much. It is the first week of August. I don't know why I think it's bloody June. What the hell's in June? There's something. I don't know. But thank you, Arthur. I appreciate you all the time. So it's in August. So I'll do that first, and then I will head to Dragon Con over Labor Day, and then I'll do Day of the Dead again in Lincoln. I do that every year as well. And that is probably the only things on the docket right now, just because I need to be able to afford that trip for research to New Orleans. Also likely not just for research, but for my best friend and I to get in trouble. So,
I mean, that's research.
Yeah, it's a girls' trip. My best friend and I are going to cause havoc. It's going to be fantastic.
That's research.
I think that's research. So
I'm down.
Right? Want to come to New Orleans? We have room in the space.
Oh, man. I'm actually going to be. When are you going to be there? I'll have
May 16th through the 21st. We have rented an entire house in walking distance from the quarter.
Oh, I'll have just gotten back from Bonaire. I have Jordan Con, and then I get done with Jordan Con on a Sunday, and we leave for Bonaire on Monday, and then we're gone for 10 days, and we get back on like a Friday, I think, and then the next Thursday I have another convention. So you'll be booked.
You'll be booked. And I've reached out to Lauren. I'm hoping I can convince her to join Angie and I.
Oh, that'd be fun.
So my friend Michelle was supposed to go with us, and she goes to New Orleans all the time, but something has come up and she can't go. And we already put the deposit down and we can't get it back. So we're like, we're going anyway. So
yes,
I got my plane ticket today for $275 for round trip, which is impressive. That's
awesome.
So so I get a little bit of a vacation there. So I probably won't do as many cons this year, but I did do. I did a new one. I went to Florida recently, and I did Coastal Magic.
Oh yeah, I saw your pictures from that. Yeah. I saw your pictures. I think on Threads. Was it Threads?
So it was somewhere. I just posted
somewhere. Everywhere. I'm pretty sure it was Threads. That's the only
probably on Threads, because I always tag if it can fit it. I send it on Facebook. I always connect to Threads and to Instagram. And send it out.
You can just have to
so everybody wherever they like to hang out will be.
Yeah.
But it was a really great. That con's so well run.
Nice.
And it's a lot of fun. And mind you, there's a lot more romance authors than there is people doing fantasy. And I think more fantasy people have been joining it. But it is, it's such a well-run con, and the panels were well attended, and the moderators knew what they were doing. And it was a lot of fun. They had all kinds of great activities. Though I will say the highlight of the entire con was a role-playing situation where it was a live version of the game Clue that wasn't, it was, and the person who built it, they made the game from scratch.
Oh, wow.
And we all were given characters, and we would go from table to table, and they had to put the clues together, and they had packets, and they had to figure out who did it, and the people who won stuff for next year. And it was amazing, the organizational quality of that con. Any author who's thinking of doing coastal magic, I highly recommend doing it.
That sounds
and
very
it's in
cool.
Florida. It was cold, of course, because I was looking forward to some warmth in a pool. And that didn't happen, but it was beautiful, and the views from my room were lovely. So,
yes, the pictures were really pretty. Like,
right, you couldn't tell how cold it was. It was fine.
Right, it was beautiful. So who cares? And honestly, either way, it's not going to be as cold as like, you know, snowbound
most
places.
Everywhere else. Yeah, it was warmer here in New Mexico than it was in Florida.
Sorry. That's
which
how
makes
it
no
works
sense.
sometimes.
But it's,
I mean, climate change. What are you gonna do?
Exactly. So, but yeah, you know, it was warmer. I kept seeing, because I have an alert and I have a camera on my front door.
Mm-hmm.
It was beautiful and sunny, and it would alert me because I could see my roommate going outside to sit in the sun and like little cut off, like in leggings and a tank top, and I'm like, I see you. As I look outside, and the wind is whipping so hard that even the pool has white caps, and it's like 50 degrees, and I'm like, I came here for sun, and that's not happening. But it was very beautiful, and I got to listen to the ocean, and so it was still nice. So yeah, but I highly recommend that con. Yeah, nice. I did. And so that was a new one for me. I try not to fly for cons more than one a year, but I'm doing 2 flights this year. I've done Jordan Con. I like Jordan Con a lot, but financially, it's just better if I'm only flying for one. So Dragon Con's always going to be the East Coast con I do. I think once I have a few new books out, I will hit Con Carolinas again. Gotcha. Since there's no point in doing Con Carolinas. Everybody who attends that has everything I've written already. So
yeah.
And if they don't have the last few books of Billy, John's there.
So they can get them have it anyway. Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
So they can go to the mothership. So yeah.
Yes.
Do you have anything new coming
out? No. I've been trying to organize do some revisions on a bunch of shorts, which is why I brought up the letter H.H. Holmes one.
I would love to read that.
So the short story collection, or that particular
one?
The
one for H.H. Holmes. I'd love to read it.
I'll send it to you. But I've been working on editing. I wanted to actually have it done in time for Jordan Con next month, but that's not going to happen because the last several weeks I haven't done any editing. But that's what
happens. It's okay.
Yeah, I know. That's my next thing. I still haven't finished the last book of my Soul Cavern series. I still haven't written the stuff I'm supposed to be writing for John. I haven't. Yeah.
And by the way, those of you who are listening who want to be authors or are thinking about being authors, a good portion of being an author is learning to forgive yourself for things.
That part,
because if you don't, you'll freeze and you won't write.
Yeah.
So you have to forgive yourself for not hitting deadlines. You have to forgive yourself for that first draft being utter shite. You just.
I mean, that's the role. That's the job of the first draft. It's supposed to be.
The first draft is supposed to suck ass.
Yeah. That is its job.
Yeah. And then you edit it, and then it's still kind of bad. So you send it to an editor who then makes it beautiful.
Yes, exactly. Yes. That is exactly right.
So, my face is so pink.
It's so cute, though. It just makes
so pink
on your cheeks. All right, y'all saw it here. Tamsin had enough booze to turn her entire face red. Huzzah! Woo!
Huzzah! I drank more than probably 2 fingers worth of whiskey, so
we'll see. Caught up for the other times when you forget,
right? And thankfully, I ate something with carbs beforehand so that I will not.
You're not
wake up tomorrow and be like, not only is daylight savings kicking my ass, but I made poor decisions.
I mean,
I went to do my makeup tonight, and I was like, I was purple here and right here, and I was like, look, it's daylight savings, but in color on my face. It's like, that's freaking great.
Now it's peanut butter whiskey, but in color.
And now I'm just apples. Yeah, now I'm just bright red apples on my face, and that's fine.
It's adorable. Look, James says, well done, my friend.
Thank you, I appreciate that. But yeah, no, that is without a doubt. This is what happens when Scottish and Irish people drink booze.
Yes, I am Italian, so I don't have that issue. I mean, I do have Irish in my background, but I'm mostly Italian, so we don't have that problem.
You're lucky. It is always evident when I've had alcohol. So yeah.
That's hilarious. All right, well, we've run out of time. I knew we would be able to fill up the hour with no problems at all. So I want to thank you so much for joining me. I want to thank everybody.
Thanks for having me on this. This was great.
Yes. So all of Tamsin's social media is going to be down in the show notes. So definitely go check out her stuff. I really recommend particularly the Billy the Kid stuff. I have Mark of the Necromancer, but I haven't read it yet. But yes. So
Flavored Blood, baby. That's all I'm telling you.
I love it.
Siska messaged me after the audiobook came out because she listened. She just sent me, she goes, "Oh my God." I'm like, this is a comedy. It's got some dark stuff in it, but it is intentionally pop culture, laugh out loud kind of. It's my weird humor on paper. So
thank you, James, for joining us. Thank you, everybody out there for joining us.
Thank you, everybody who came on.
Yes, and definitely go check out Tamsin's stuff. Don't forget, we have started our spring season here on Go Indie Now, and there are a bajillion shows that I cannot keep track of, but they're all there, and Joe can tell you more when he wants to. But y'all, don't forget, it's always time to go indie now.